Right, let's take a look at data tables. So this is a different variable type that we can use. So it's different to lists. Lists generally have kind of one column, one thing that they're combining together into a list. But a data table is much more like a spreadsheet. So let's just create a separate flow so we can see it more easily. So we've got quite a few different options here under variables, then data table, and so it groups them all together here. Lots of different things we can do. So the first one we're going to do is create a new data table. So by default, it'll always call it data table. I like to give it a more descriptive name. So let's just say we're doing something around articles. Now at the moment it's 0 rows, 0 columns. We can add those programmatically through the flows, the other actions, the list of actions on the left-hand side. But generally with a data table, how I use it most of the time is that I'm going to set it up. It's kind of known data that I want to capture in this kind of column and row format. So I might have something like an ID, and then I might have a title of the post, and then I might have a third column saying the article content itself. So when you, I just want to hit save and save again. And now I'll just go back into that. The interesting thing here, when you create it, it says 1 row, 3 columns. So under the edit, so it's already created this empty row for us. If we right click on it and go, I don't want that one. Actually, we can't even right click and delete. We just click on it and click delete on the keyboard. We lose all our columns as well. So I'm not quite sure why it's been done in that way, but it is. And so the first thing that we actually need to do, if we go and start adding data to this data table, we'll have that empty row there first. So the first thing we do is we grab this clear data table and the data table we just created. So the first step it's going to take after creating it is clearing it, so there's nothing in it. So we do that, and it's going to run and create the article data table for us with those 3 columns that we specified. And then the first action it's going to take after doing that is clearing it back to 0 rows. So we've got a nice blank, empty data table we can now add things to. And so one of the most common operations you're going to perform on a data table is inserting a row into it. So let's just grab that, insert an article data table. And now you've got a couple of options here. You can insert it at the end of the data table, which 99% of the time, that's what you'll be doing. Occasionally, you might want to insert it at a particular point or position a particular position in the data table. And so you might need to specify the row index here. And this is the row index for data tables is 0 based. So whatever is the first item is numbered 0. That's the index for it. And then the second is number 1, and then 2, and so on. So if we want to put it right at the top, we'd say row index 0, insert it there. But generally, I'll mostly only use kind of the end of data table. And now it's a little bit different in how you want to add new values to it. For the list, we just simply chuck one thing in here and it goes into the list. For this one, we need to format slightly differently. So we've got 3 columns of data. So let's say this is the ID, and we need to surround it with quotes when it's data that we're putting in static data rather than variables. So we'll just put in 300, and then the title. What's the title? We'll say title of the post. And then we've got commas between them. You can have a space after it or not, doesn't matter. And then we're going to call this article content. Now you'd think that would be fine. It's we've got 3 columns in there, and we've got 3 bits of data. They're comma separated, so surely that will work. So let's just try that and see if that does work for us. That's just going to create the article, and straight away we've got an error saying no. It looks like you're trying to add 1 thing and you need to be adding 3 things. So it's an interesting format that you need to add in here. So we need to have the % sign as if it's a variable, and then we need the open square bracket, and then at the other end we need the close square bracket, and then the another % sign. So the square brackets here mean a collection of things or an array of things, and we've got 3 things. So we've got that surrounded there, and then we need the percentage signs as well. So let's just run it again, and we should find we'll get them added this time. Okay, so we got no error, and we've now got 1 row in here. We can double click on this and we can see it's the content that we just added. So we can also have these not as static text but as a variable data. The interesting thing here, because we've already got these percentage signs here, let's say we want to add text as number. We can add that in here. By default, it'll add in the percentage symbol character because it's a variable and that's what it thinks you want. But you can see it's already erroring and saying, hey, invalid value. So we actually want to take those out for this one. So it kind of looks a little bit unusual because we've got these percentage characters here. We've got the text as number. It kind of looks like it's just text, but if we hit save, you can see that text as number is highlighted with the blue around it, which means that it's a variable in here, whereas the other text, title of the post or article content, is static text that we've got inserted in there. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing to get right. And then there's other things like deleting a row from the data table. You're going to specify the data table, and again, just you have to know which row index you want to delete. You might want to update data table item. So for this one, we'll need to know the column that we want to update and also the row that we want to update. Again, the column is 0 based, so we might say we want to update the ID. Let's just do that. Let's update the data table, column 0, row 0, and the new value is going to be 301. So we'll just run that. It's going to go through, create the data table, clear the data table, add the row, and then update the single row. So we should see 301 here. And we got text as number, whatever values in text as number, it'll just be a 0. Yeah, so then it changed it to 301. Then we might have other things here like finding or replacing data in a data table. That's really handy when you need to go through and find that data. And you have options of whether you look everywhere in the entire data table or maybe just on a specific column, whether you match whole cell contents or just sort of part of it. You can use regular expressions as well. And whether you get just the first match or all of the matches that you want. And it's going to produce a data table of matches for you. So that's a really useful one. And then we've got things like, when I talked about it earlier, when you create this new data table, you can set up the columns and then that's it. Or you don't have to set it up at that point. You could be inserting the columns later, deleting the columns. You might be inserting additional columns, and then deleting empty rows from a data table is useful. So you can use that in place of the clear data table for that first step because it's just going to delete the empty row that's there. But I prefer clear data table. It's more obvious what it's doing. And then deleting duplicate rows is really handy, just like we have for the list. And then we have the clear one that we've already used, sorting it, filtering it, and then merging, joining, and then we have other options